and welcome to NEWORK's first legislative webinar of 2025, the first 100 days, strategy and action. I'm Meg Olson, NEWORK's Grassroots Mobilization Director. Ever since the election, hundreds of our advocates, members, and supporters have reached out asking, "What can I do?" or telling us, "I'm ready, just tell me when it's go time." And I'm delighted to say that the interest in this webinar only proves the NEWORK community's commitment to gospel justice and legislative advocacy. Tonight, we have nearly 700 advocates live with us from across the country and over 2,100 registrants. Before we delve into our agenda, I want us all to take a moment and send our love to our NEWORK community in Southern California who are impacted by the fires. Now, moving on to our time together, we'll first open in prayer. Then we will introduce our new policy agenda, An Economy for All. After that, we'll provide a broad overview of the first 100 days in the administration and the 119th Congress and delve into the key legislative issues. Of course, it wouldn't be a NEWORK event without a call to action. So then we will tell you what you can do in the upcoming weeks. And then we'll have time for questions. Please feel free to type your questions into the Q&A box throughout the webinar. Joining us tonight are my beloved colleagues, Joan Neal, our Interim Executive Director, Virginia Schilder, our Communications Specialist, Laura Peralta Schulte, our Senior Director of Public Policy and Government Relations, Jarrett Smith, our Senior Lobbyist, Ralph McLeod, a Senior Fellow on our Government Relations team, Drake Starling, our Senior Government Relations Advocate, Renette Asser-Watham, Government Relations Director, and Catherine Gillette, who's a Senior Grassroots Organizer on the Grassroots Mobilization team. And now I would like to pass it over to Joan Neal to lead us in prayer.
Thank you, Meg, and good evening, everyone. Thank you for being with us this evening. My friends, as we begin our webinar tonight, we are all aware that these are challenging times for our country, for our democracy. Our vision of a free, diverse, inclusive, pluralistic country is on the line, starting now. And yet Pope Francis has called us to celebrate 2025 as a Jubilee year of hope. Hope is a powerful strategy because it allows us to dream of a better day, and it empowers us to act. Although it may not seem that way, hope is the strategy we need for just such a time as this. So as we begin our work with the 119th Congress, let us be empowered by our hope for a better future and emboldened to do everything we can to bring it about. But we cannot do it all on our own. And as people of faith, we know that we are not alone in our work for justice. And so as we begin, let us call upon the one who is all-powerful and in whose name we act. Let us pray. Good and gracious God, we stand before you this night, dismayed but not discouraged, worn out but not worn down, depressed but not disheartened. May we, as pilgrims of hope, use our agency to stay in this journey, to stand against injustice and for love and fairness, to call upon our legislators to act with integrity, to pass policies and laws that protect those who are most vulnerable, and all of us who hunger and thirst for justice. Great God, let your Spirit go before us to chart the way. March behind us to protect us from harm. Walk beside us to strengthen us as we continue to move onward. So that in the armor of hope, we have the courage to be salt and light, to agitate and advocate for justice, mercy, equity, and an inclusive democracy where everyone thrives, no exceptions. To shine the light of truth so that things hatched in darkness cannot hide from light. So that our policies and laws respect the dignity of all, honor the sanctity of all creation, promote peace, and advance the common good. Mighty God, give us the courage to continue to move steadfastly forward toward that beloved community you created us all to be, where justice rolls down like a river and righteousness flows like a stream. Confidence and hope, we call upon you, O God. Hear our prayer. Amen, amen, amen. And now please welcome Virginia Schilder, our communications specialist. Virginia.
Thank you so much, Joan. Let me get my screen set up here. Okay, hi everyone. My name is Virginia Schilder and I'm on the communications team here at NEWORK. As Meg said, in a few minutes, we're going to hear about what's ahead in the new Congress and administration. But first, I have the privilege of sharing with you for the first time our new policy agenda, An Economy for All. As you all know, there are so many important issues out there and so many things that our communities need, but we can't do it all. So having an agenda helps us to be clear about our work and stay focused on where we can have the greatest impact. Here at NEWORK, we update our policy agenda every 4 or so years to reflect our priorities. So for those of you who've been with us for a while, you're probably familiar with Build Anew, which was our agenda for the past 4 years. Now we've developed our updated agenda, An Economy for All, because we know that our current economy is, to quote Pope Francis, an economy of exclusion that privileges the ultra wealthy and corporations at the expense of everyone else. Too many of us can't afford basic needs and have to choose between paying rent and buying groceries. And that's because many of our elected officials choose to side with the ultra wealthy, letting them influence our politics, pollute our neighborhoods, and get rich off of our work, all while slashing our critical healthcare and food programs in order to pay for even more tax handouts for the rich. But we know it doesn't have to be this way. So together with all of you, we are continuing to demand federal policies that reflect our dignity and deliver what our communities need and deserve. And those things include, as you see on the screen here, jobs with paid leave and wages that actually let us pay our bills, save for retirement and more, affordable housing, food, and healthcare as a right for everyone, safe and welcoming neighborhoods where we can be free of gun violence, targeted policing, and discrimination, clean air and water for our neighborhoods, a tax code that ensures the wealthy pay the taxes they owe so we can actually fund all of these things and more, an immigration system that is humane and that keeps our families and communities together. And finally, a political system that is by and for we the people and not able to be bought by billionaires. So no matter where you live, what you look like, or how much money you have, you are made in God's image. We are made in God's image, and we deserve to thrive, not just survive. That's why we're building an economy for all of us, not just a small wealthy few. And we are so excited that you're joining us and ready to get to work. So now, to get us into the nitty-gritty of what we can expect for the next 100 days, I'll pass it over to my rock star colleague, Laura Peralta Schulte, NEWORK's Senior Director of Public Policy and Government Relations.
Thank you so much, Virginia. And what a beautiful presentation in terms of the agenda. So the GR team has the wonderful privilege to walk you through what we're expecting in the first 100 days. And friends, just knowing kind of who the incoming president is, I think one of the clear things that we have to suggest at the outset of this discussion is that he is unpredictable. And so while we are laying out the agenda now, things will evolve. And we will do our very best to make sure that throughout this time, you get the materials you need to do the work. Let me just frame it as we move forward. There are really two parts to the equation as we begin the administration next week. First of all, we know that the president has already said he is going to be engaging in a strategy of shock and awe. We do expect, particularly as early as Monday, that the president will move forward very aggressively with executive actions. In terms of the areas that will likely be at risk, so much of our agenda is going to be hit by those executive actions. We know that the biggest focus most likely will be related to what we would call his number one campaign strategy, which was really the demonization of our immigrant friends, family, and church members. And so we do expect that as of next week, we will see very aggressive administrative actions to begin what we believe will be aggressive enforcement and deportation policies. My wonderful colleague, Renette, will walk you through what she believes that looks like. But we do want to suggest that at the beginning of the term, we will see impacts across the agenda that Virginia laid out. Let me then switch to where we are from the legislative standpoint, because that really is in the near term where we can have the greatest impact in terms of protecting very fundamental programs that we care deeply about. So the Republicans, much like the Democrats did when the Biden administration first came in with their Build Back Better bill, the Republicans will once again use budget reconciliation to pass the majority of their agenda. Remember, budget reconciliation is a process that is different than the passage of a normal bill in that it is a partisan bill that requires only 51 votes in the Senate. So it does not require the need for bipartisan solutions to the nation's problems. So what do we already know about this bill as in terms of what's on the table? We know that the number one priority of the Trump administration and the business community is to extend tax cuts that expire in 2025 for the wealthiest corporations and people in the country. We know as of this week very clearly that they will attack our healthcare programs, much like they did in 2017 when they moved forward to try to repeal the Affordable Care Act, and attack our primary food programs. They're going to take healthcare, try to take healthcare and food off the tables of American families. We know that they're going to try to attack the clean energy incentives passed in the Inflation Reduction Act, which are fundamentally reshaping the energy market so we can transition into clean energy. And my friends, we do know that in this bill, they will try to pay for the immigration and border militarization that they seek to accomplish through administrative orders. So we need to roll up our sleeves and work because there is work to do. Meg, if you can go to the next slide. Two things to remember as we begin a deeper dive into the substance. One is, I love to say politics is math. That is fundamentally what it is. And even in budget reconciliation, which is a partisan bill, they will need to pass, just primarily to pass the bill in the House, 218 votes. In the Senate, they will need 51 votes. And you are likely watching as you're reading the newspaper that the margins in the House and in the Senate are very thin. They can only at this point lose 2 members in order to pass their bill. They, in the Senate, can only lose 3 members to pass the bill. So what does that mean? That means priorities that we're going to be talking about, if we double down, if we are strategic, we will not see those programs as part of the reconciliation bill. We will not kill this bill, my friends. It will go forward. But our single goal as we approach this is damage control, to try to take out as much of the bad things we know that they're trying to do in the context of this bill. All other bills run into the normal process of needing 60 votes in the Senate. There are a number of bills that are going to be up this year, in particular in appropriations, that need to be bipartisan. So we will have opportunities to impact this agenda. Finally, it is, as the slide says, very hard for Congress to do things, to do 2 things at one time, to walk and chew gum. So reconciliation is hard. Remember, in the Biden era, we spent months and months trying to get that bill passed. They have a couple of bills that they must pass in terms of funding bills, one in March, one in September. We've got an interesting discussion in terms of the debt ceiling coming up early summer so that the government can fund its obligations. This is all to say that we've got our work to do and opportunities to make an impact. Finally, I want to leave you, Meg, if you can switch to the next one, to just what we're going to be talking about in detail. When we fight, my friends, when we are strategic, I believe we will win some very important battles. And where we lose on Capitol Hill, our goal is going to be to win back home, because this is an unpopular agenda. And we've got to make sure that people understand that they are attempting to give trillions of dollars to the wealthiest among us at the expense of working families. With that, let me go ahead and turn it over to Jarrett, who is our tax expert and can talk to you all about the tax fight.
Thank you, Laura. Good evening. Thank you for joining tonight's webinar on crucial policy developments in the 119th Congress's first session. I'll give a brief overview of the proposed tax policy legislation. But let me first say, your advocacy is vital for advancing economic justice. As we begin 2025, we stand at a critical juncture in tax policy reform. The upcoming reconciliation bill or bills present both promising opportunities and significant challenges that will shape economic equity for years to come. I would say even a generation. Let me break this down into 2 key components. First, we'll start with challenges. We face significant headwinds. There's mounting pressure to extend the 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, like Laura mentioned, in its entirety, and add new tax cuts like no tax on tips, like the president-elect mentioned on the campaign trail. That and other tax proposals could add $11 trillion to the deficit. These changes, combined with new corporate tax benefits, could deepen wealth inequality. More concerning is the suggested offsets, cuts to essential programs, including housing assistance, food support, and healthcare subsidies. Republicans are targeting up to $5 trillion in budget cuts. These are programs that directly impact our most vulnerable communities. Now, the good news. There are some encouraging news releases that are coming from the Republicans. We're seeing momentum for meaningful reform to one crucial tax credit. The child tax credit is poised for potential enhancement in the upcoming reconciliation bill. To put this in perspective, when we temporarily expanded the child tax credit in 2021, we witnessed one of the largest reductions in child poverty in this country's history. These aren't just policy change, they're transformative tools that can lift millions of families out of poverty. But it's not certain who will benefit the most from these changes, and that's why we're going to need your help. While reconciliation rules limit sweeping policy changes, we have a unique window of opportunity to influence this legislation. Historically, NEWORK's tax policy priorities have focused on creating more equitable tax code that serves all Americans, not just the wealthy few. In the coming weeks, we'll need your voices to advocate for these priorities. We'll be sharing specific action items at the end of the webinar and ways you can engage with your members of Congress. Thank you, and I can answer your questions at the end of the program. My colleague Ralph will now talk about food policy.
Thank you, Jared. We urge and ask you to walk with us as we urge Congress to strengthen and protect programs that feed hungry individuals and families. Despite the current efforts, some 39 million people still suffer with hunger in the United States. The nation's largest anti-hunger program, SNAP, or the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, is a critical and essential component of the Farm Bill. Food and daily nutrition continue to be a challenge for far too many of our citizens, with an especially damaging impact on children. The Farm Bill feeds families and strengthens a network of food producers and providers that helps the spine, the backbone of our country. We urge you to work with us as we support a Farm Bill that prioritizes support for programs that feed the hungry, both domestically and abroad, and a safety net for farmers that ensures resources that respects small and moderate-sized family farms and vulnerable farmers, the well-being of our rural communities, and sustainable stewardship of our lands. Additionally, support for conservation efforts must also be protected. And you'll hear about some of that from my colleague Drake in just a few moments. And funding must improve for small or moderate-sized farms, Black farmers, and other historically marginalized groups. At this critical time in our nation's history, efforts to reduce expenses that increase the bottom line for the wealthiest must not be borne on the backs of our most vulnerable citizens, including the removal of unjustifiable lifetime ban for SNAP benefits for individuals who have been convicted of drug felonies. Friends, we must have a preferential option that must lead and guide efforts to support a just and equitable Farm Bill. With that, I'll turn it back to Laura, who will talk a little bit about Medicaid threats.
Thank you, Ralph. I'm going to cheat because I get to lead the healthcare portion of this as well. And important it is, my friends. So we are going to make sure that Medicaid is protected from cuts that kill. So just like as I said earlier, in 2017, healthcare is on the line in this budget reconciliation bill. And what do we know? As people of faith, we know that healthcare is a right, not a privilege for the well-off and the well-connected. We know very clearly that Medicaid is working to make people's lives healthier and more secure. It is a lifeline across the country. For families, we're talking about 40% of all births. We're talking about half of all kids in the country. In terms of reducing racial and ethnic disparities, 6 out of 10 adults in the program are people of color. For mental health services, we know that 14 million adults receive their mental health services through Medicaid, and the funding for school programs also go through Medicaid. We know that the elderly and the disabled, that Medicaid is a lifeline. Why? Because it is the primary payer of nursing homes and community-based long-term care services. So when you talk about cutting Medicaid, whether it is cutting it by putting a cap on spending or cutting it any other way, you are risking life by that action. So we know that we need to protect healthcare for 90 million Americans in this bill. And we will fight and then fight with you to make sure that that program stays whole so that our people stay healthy. There's an opportunity that we also have on the horizon, my friends, and that really comes out of the great work that you already helped accomplish during the Biden administration, where we were able to secure tax assistance called premium tax credits, so people could actually afford their health care. For a long time, there was a difference between people actually being able to get health care because they didn't have the money in their pocket to spend every month. Those credits expire this year. And so the opportunity for us is to raise our voices and say, we are not leaving anybody behind. Healthcare is a right. We are gonna fight to win on the Medicaid side, and we're gonna make sure that those people who are getting healthcare because of these premium tax credits keep it. And with that, my friend, I'd like to turn it over to my colleague Drake to tell you about our environmental work. Drake.
Thank you very much, Laura. So climate and clean energy, those are two very powerful words that actually were sort of brought to fruition under the Inflation Reduction Act passed into 2022. The journey towards clean energy comes with its own set of challenges, but also some exciting opportunities. So let's start with the challenges. In this Congress, there are going to be plenty of partisan and political divides. There are very different political views that make it difficult to agree on how to move forward with energy policies. This ultimately slows down progress and makes it tougher to pass laws that could help us to transition to cleaner energy. Secondly, permitting reform is on the lips of almost every member of Congress. For those who do not know, any type of energy project, whether it's fossil fuel or clean energy like wind farms and solar farms, those take time and those require special permits and transmissions that oftentimes can take several years. Right now, the approval process for these projects is long and complicated, and there's a debate about how to fix it. However, we would like to fix it without also making it easier for fossil fuel projects to expand. Republicans seem likely to expand permitting reform for fossil fuel infrastructure throughout the country. One of the other main challenges for the clean energy transition to really take off, that requires mining several critical minerals. At the moment, we are dependent on other countries' mineral supply chains. That means that in order for that to change, we will have to start mining a lot more here at home. And that comes with its own set of environmental challenges. Many of the materials needed for clean energy, like the metals in batteries and solar panels and wind turbines, come from other countries. So this can be risky, especially if global tensions disrupt supply. This is something that is probably going to change this Congress. Now, some of the opportunities. There are new incentives for clean energy. The Inflation Reduction Act, also known as the IRA, was the largest climate bill in US history, and it passed under the Joe Biden administration. It created financial support for clean energy projects and manufacturing right here in the US. These incentives encourage businesses and communities to invest in renewable energy solutions. Trump and Republicans have lambasted the successful bill as wasteful and are taking aim at clean energy provisions. However, there is a small ray of hope because some Republicans have come out publicly to support the bill's clean energy investments. This is where we believe there is a strong possibility that a wholesale repeal of the Inflation Reduction Act's clean energy tax credits may fail. And continuing on, energy independence. By producing more clean energy at home, we've seen that we can rely less on other countries for our energy needs, which makes us more secure and resilient. In fact, 80% of the Inflation Reduction Act's benefits go to Republican-held districts. Jobs and economic growth. The shift to clean energy means new jobs. That's everything from building wind turbines to installing solar panels, and it's a chance to grow local economies in a sustainable way. In fact, recently, a study showed that nearly 500,000 clean energy jobs have been created because of the Inflation Reduction Act alone. Last year, the Department of Energy released another report stating that now 48% of all energy jobs are clean energy jobs. If the Inflation Reduction Act stays intact, then this number is likely to increase significantly over the coming years. In short, while there are challenges to overcome, the shift to clean energy is an incredible opportunity to create jobs, protect the planet, and ensure a healthier future for everyone. The Inflation Reduction Act is a critical step forward, and with the right focus, we can prevent the rollback of this historic climate law. And with that, I'm going to pass the baton over to my colleague, Renette, on immigration policy and more.
Thank you, Drake, and good evening, all. Before I get into the nitty,
Renette, you've muted yourself.
sorry. Thanks, Drake, and good evening, all. Before I get into the nitty-gritty of what to expect in the next 100 days, let me give a bit of the framework of what we're going to see writ large. Basically, what we're going to see, the framework of anything and everything that was going to happen in the next 100 days is going to be division and distortion. And what I mean by division is the division between us, between the vulnerable groups that this administration is, the administration that will start on Monday, is and will be sowing between us. It will sow division between Black people and brown people, between the middle class and people whose incomes fall beneath the poverty line, between people who have documents and people who don't. For example, with all these talk of deportations, there's a constant chatter about it will only be criminals. It will only be new people, not us. You know, all of these bad people, it's never us. It's always them. This is not true. Deportations are indiscriminate. No one checks your papers when they're rounding you up, especially if they think you quote unquote look like an immigrant. But again, this chatter is to divide us so that the documented will not join hands with the undocumented. Instead, we will see deportations happening and we will say, thank God, we are not them, and go quietly into the night so we can be more quote unquote law abiding and therefore go against our own humanity. The second element of this framework of what we're going to see in the next 100 days is distortion. The distortion meaning is to portray something as good when it is terrible and hold up something worse. So we tend to say, it's not bad, it could be worse. And thereby, again, we are disinclined to take action. Let me give you an example. At this time, the House has passed and the Senate is debating the Lake and Riley bill. This is a bill that is supposed to protect people, but it does not. This bill is not about protection, it's not about security. It will criminalize shoplifting and put children in detention indefinitely. If it is passed, and I pray it won't be, you could have a 16-year-old who has lived here in this country since the age of 1, who has shoplifted a candy bar, who will be in indefinite detention until he or she begs to be deported. And of course, then the authorities will say, oh, these people, quote unquote, self-deported. And if you protest at this arrest, you will be told, why are you protesting? The detention is of criminals. Again, everyone is talking about mass deportations. Mr. Trump has said that he will get the military to carry out these deportations. So this is what we're expecting, this spectacle, something to shock us into action. But what is really happening? The raid that we saw last week in Bakersfield was at a gas station. It's a gas station frequented by immigrants, where a dozen immigrants were taken away by Border Patrol agents in unmarked cars. It hardly made the news. It was not shocking. But it had the effect the administration, the incoming administration wants. The next day in Bakersfield, 75% of the workforce in that area did not report to work. And think about it. You know, your parents don't go to work. You can't find no work. You're scared you'll be deported. Children get hungry. They might shoplift a candy bar. You see where I'm going? This is how it works. What we are seeing is a slew of bills. This week alone, we saw this, that have or will pass the House in the next 2 days. These bills have great names. Protect Women and Girls in Sports Act, Preventing Violence Against Women by Illegal Aliens Act. This sounds really great, you know, protecting women, preventing violence, but it's a total distortion. These bills don't protect anyone. We already, excuse me, we already have laws that protect people, that empower women in sports and empower women survivors in violence. Title IX and the Violence Against Women Act. But what these new bills do is they dilute these protections and attack other groups, trans women and immigrant women who are survivors of domestic violence. So you can see the distortion, it's constant. This is how distortion works. And when you normalize the bad, then we are not shocked into action. So now, coming to the nitty-gritty in the first 100 days. Yes, as you know, Laura has said, and we've read in the newspapers, we will see executive orders that criminalize immigrants, that order deportations, but more importantly, they will order detention. And then once you see these executive orders, what we're going to see, as Laura said again, is we're going to see this process called reconciliation. And in this process called reconciliation, we're going to see extensive funding for those detention centers. We're going to see extensive funding for militarization of the border and also the interior. The number that is going to be, as in the dollar number, that is going to fund these programs of militarization and criminalization of our family, our friends, people around us, people who look like me, are going to be at a huge cost. They're going to be at a huge cost for programs that we love and we care for, like Medicaid, housing, all of those programs that we have worked so hard to keep and that really serve us. And then when you complain that there are no funds for these programs that work for you, the administration will blame it on these criminal aliens. This is how distortion works. This is how division works. The Lake and Riley bill I just spoke to you about will cost $83 million to lock up innocent people for 1 year. That is the cost of the Department of Agriculture's Organic Market Development Grant Program for 1 year. So an entire program that will bring you organic food will be cut just to detain innocent people and stick on them the label criminal with just this one bill. So just think about reconciliation. Therefore, we can be prepared to act. I know it seems like a lot. It might even seem very overwhelming. And we at NEWORK understand this. But we also know it is together that we can push back. We can salvage what we have and hold the line. We can fight for our very humanity. And just as importantly, we can fight for our humaneness, which is somehow being criminalized, and we can fight for our democracy. No act is too small to be disregarded. We could discuss more on immigration at question time, but right now, to tell you more about what you can do, let me pass it on to my colleague, Catherine. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Huge thanks to all of my colleagues for their detailed analysis about what we can expect from the new Congress and the new administration in the coming days and weeks. I hope that you found their presentation to be both helpful and motivating. As you heard, this is a really key moment and we need everyone's help. Later this month, network advocates from all across the country are going to be visiting their representatives' in-district offices during the January recess, which is the 27th to the 31st. Over 900 folks are here with us right now this evening, and we would love for all of you to participate in this activity. These visits, which are informally known as drop-offs, do not require scheduling a meeting with the local office. Instead, you simply look up what days and hours the office is open and stop by for an informal conversation with the staff there. We're going to be sharing a couple of resources with you for your visits, a one-pager about NEWORK and another document identifying 5 priority issues in the upcoming budget reconciliation bills. And these visits are an important way for you to begin building relationships with the staff at your local offices. And these relationships are going to be incredibly strategic in the days, in the weeks, in the months, and the years to come. So, if you are interested in joining with advocates all across the country, or even just in learning more about this, please sign up using the link that pops up when we finish our time here this evening. It will also be in the follow-up email that we send out later this week. We would love for you to register so that we know you are participating in this advocacy and we can make sure that you have all the resources that you need. We also want to connect you with other advocates from your district. And so if multiple people sign up for your district, we would love to connect you all so you can participate in these drop-offs together. There is strength, there is power in numbers. So that is our big ask for this evening, but your involvement does not have to stop there. We hope that you will consider becoming a member of NEWORK to help support our work with Congress. We are so incredibly grateful to the more than 5,000 members who make our efforts possible, and we would love for you to join them. A gift of $20 or more entitles you to an annual membership with all of its benefits. And if you're already a member, we hope that you will consider making a special gift in honor of the incredible advocacy that is about to take place. You can go to our website to learn more, or again, this information will all be in our follow-up email to the field later this week. There was a question in the chat earlier about advocate teams. We would also encourage you to join a local advocate, one in your state or region. There is something incredibly powerful about doing advocacy in community, and we have 12 different states with teams that gather monthly. We hope that you will take a look at the list, and if there's an advocates team in your state, we hope that you will consider getting involved. And finally, I hope that you will follow us on social media. We have an incredible communications team, and they regularly share important updates, both about NEWORK and also the policies that we work on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and YouTube. And so following us is a great way to stay in the loop and help us get the word out about what is going on with Congress and the administration. Your likes, your comments, and your shares are really powerful and helpful to our advocacy work. And finally, the moment that you've all been waiting for, I am going to turn things back over to my colleague Meg Olson for our questions and answers session.
Thank you so much, Catherine. Apologies for that. We have some really great questions, and so I'm inviting all of my colleagues to come up. In case we don't get to yours, and we do have some variations on some themes here, so hopefully it'll be answered. But in case we don't get to your question, we do have your email as part of the Q&A, and so we will respond to you within a week. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and let's delve into some of these questions. So many good ones. We have some real advanced class folks on here. So Laura, I'm going to start with you. And this is really about budget reconciliation and also the must-pass legislation in September, which I believe was the debt ceiling. There's a question, is the timing that you said, that April-September framework, is that pretty much set in stone, or is there something else is there a table that could be upset? Tell us about the timing.
So my friends, is anything in Congress actually ever set in stone? Very few things. But the way that Congress works, as folks probably know, is a deadline is really the point where they act. So folks might recall that many of us were working to try to get a full appropriations bill forward for FY25. Post-election, the incoming president thought he wanted to have his stamp on FY25. And so the Republicans in both the House and Senate slowed the process down, and there was a short-term extension until March. That is a deadline. That is a moment of action, and we have leverage there. We need to use it in terms of moving that bill forward. Likewise, September is always a time where the budget comes up, and that is a moment of action as well. I think that the point really of the slide is they are trying to accomplish a lot at once. And so we are going to have to be clever. We are going to have to be clever, my friends, to read the signs of the times, to use the process in a way that furthers mission. And I believe we will identify times for folks to do their thing out in the field. I always say we do not win in Washington. We win back home. We win back home. So whether you live in a Republican district or state or a Democratic district or state, your advocacy is key, because we got to make sure the light is heavy on the Democrats to keep their messaging up, to do the right thing. Not that they'll play in the reconciliation space, but to call out what we see in front of us. And we need a number of Republicans, and we have a very good list of who, there are good Republicans, just like there are good Democrats, my friends. So the approach may have to be a little bit different, but we already know who we need to talk to, and we are ready with your help to get that job done. So Meg, I hope that helps.
Absolutely. Thank you, Laura. Jarrett, a question about, will we support a reconciliation bill that contains positive changes to the EITC and, earned income tax credit and child tax credit, whose cost, as we know, pales in contrast to the trillions that will benefit wealthy individuals and corporations?
Meg, thank you for the question. It all depends. What are the details? In general, we will support it, but we want to make sure that those two tax credits help the most vulnerable, that the benefit is concentrated to people that make $400,000 or $500,000, families that make $400,000 or $500,000 a year. It all depends on the details. What does it look like? So yes. Generally, we would support it, but we have to see what it says.
Great. Thanks, Jarrett. Laura, one more for you. Can you give us a little bit more detail about what you mean by block grants versus per capita spending?
Okay, so and Meg, we can commit to definitely sending good resources for folks so that they understand what that means. So as folks probably know, that there is a relationship in the Medicaid space between what the federal government gives to states, and it's really the states that execute the program. And so there are a number of ways that the House Budget Committee just put out a roadmap for what they want to do. A block grant is simply just a set amount of money that the federal government gives the states. to spend. And so right now, the way the program works is that when there is need, the money flows to the states, which allows everybody to be covered. And so if you do a block grant, or frankly, if you do a per capita cap, which is just another way to cut it, you limit the amount of money that a state receives. And particularly, Rochelle, I saw your question in the chat. A state like Iowa is a state that is looking at cutting its tax bills for the wealthiest among you. So when you have reduced revenue and an aging population, what does that mean? That means whether or not you block grant or you cap the spending on a per person basis, you have less money. The state will have to either spend more money, of which many do not have, or cut the program and cut the services. 2/3 of all spending goes to long-term care. So what we're talking about in this bill is that they are literally trying to take money from the nursing homes, you know what I mean, to fund tax credits for Elon Musk. It is atrocious. And the good news, there's a good news here in the Medicaid fight. We've won before, I believe, because of the fact that states will have to bear that expense, that we work together with our allies in the secular community, the disability community, ARP, others in the fight. I think we're going to win this one. So we know who to talk to. We know that we can do the work. We just need to do the work now and together.
Thank you so much, Laura. Wow, so many incredible questions. We have a lot though on this. All of our members who are who have Democratic representatives or senators, they're wondering, will their efforts matter? Is it worth talking to? Renette, I know you marked that you wanted to start off the answer to this question.
Yeah. Specific to California, but as Meg was saying, writ large, there are several, especially in the House, members who are, who need or who are amenable to and who could be moved, to support our policies in that sense. And just an example, it's a Republican, Valadeo. He is a new, he just flipped his district in California. That is a part of the people who were detained from the raid last week were from his district. And, that our partners who had spoken to him after that to complain about this, he was then very shocked, and he was like, oh, he was quite amenable to talking more about, other immigration policies that could support this. So I think, while there's much pressure against, going against the incoming president and all of that within the Republican Party, there is also, a lot of pressure for people who just squeaked by and who just won. They understand the power of their constituents very much. And in the same way, you would see Democrats and others who could be moved, and I could go on and name a few, but I would leave it to my colleagues, to talk about others that they might know of.
So, any more thoughts on why we need to visit our Democratic legislators?
Oh, and I think one other thing, why we need to visit our Democratic legislators is mainly for two reasons. One is to, keep them accountable. I think there was a question in the chat is why are Democrats supporting this Lake and Riley bill? Like a lot of people just heard immigration, just heard border, and then, they went with oh, this is border. We really need to look like we're secure. And then, especially yesterday, we were hearing oh, we didn't read that part. We didn't read this part of this bill. And it's like an 8-page bill. It's like, why didn't you read it? But anyway, it is to keep them accountable. And when they heard, Democrats, they didn't hear that, They only heard that it was going to be 83 million only yesterday, and they were very shocked about that as well. So, you usually have more information than a lot of the Congress people. And you also need to keep them accountable and need to support them, because some of them feel really, really alone, and which is not the case. As Laura was saying, all of this agenda is not a popular agenda. It is the policies that are here that are popular, and we need to remind people of that.
Great. Thank you so much, Renette. Catherine, I am pitching this one over to you. Lots of folks, well, I guess it's also, I can answer this as well. We have lots of folks, especially Minnesotans, go Minnesota, who want to start advocate teams in their own states or want support on their advocacy. What do we say?
So while we only have advocate teams currently in a handful of states, we are certainly doing advocacy in every state, in every district, all across the country. And so if you are interested in getting involved further, shoot us an email, info@networklobby.org, and we'd be happy to talk to you about the possibilities.
Yes, I see 5 Minnesotans in the Q&A who want to start a team. I think you have a team. So
there you go. We're again
connect you. And doing a drop-off is actually a wonderful way to get together in your district, and we can talk about how to support your advocacy moving forward this year.
Amen.
Yeah. And that goes for any state, but I was amazed by the Minnesota delegation here that all want to build and to do work in community. Drake, final question here. We have lots and lots of partners. We have lots of questions about different organizations, but we have some folks here who want to know our collaboration with other Catholic environmental groups like the Catholic Climate Covenant. So tell us about your amazing collaboration work that you're doing.
Yeah, so well, we currently work with the Catholic Climate Covenant, the Laudato Si movement, Interfaith Power and Light, although they are not Catholic per se, they are an interfaith organization, and several other Catholic faith-based organizations that are trying to push climate to the forefront. And they also are doing a lot of the same work that we do, trying to advocate for stronger climate policies on the Hill. So we end up complementing each other a lot and sharing lots of information that ultimately leads us to have a more successful outcome on the Hill.
Great, thank you. And we're excited for this new work this year and to see how these relationships will continue. All right, my friends, we have a minute, and I know some of you have mentioned that you want to go hear our president give his last address of the evening. So thank you so much for hanging in there, for participating. Over, 920 people on tonight. That is a record. And I'm excited for all the work we're going to be doing together, and be on the lookout for those follow-up emails so you can learn how to sign up, so you can sign up for drop-offs and visiting your members' offices, and we'll get all the materials into your hands. And then also, just if you want to become a member of NEWORK or get more involved in any other level. So, and thank you to all of my colleagues who made this webinar possible, those you see on the screen and those who are in Illinois giving workshops to high school students who still led the way. So thank you. And
Hey, can I say something real quick?
Absolutely, Jared.
Thank you. I just want to say we appreciate all of you for joining us this evening. I know there are a lot of other priorities in your life. I also want to mention that, budget reconciliation, this bill is going to be very complicated. There are going to be a lot of pieces in it that we are not going to like. Just because we might see one or two things that might affirm some of our policies does not mean as an organization that we are going to support it. But we will provide guidance on that, and I want to join my colleagues and thank all of you.
Thank you, Jared. Yes. All right, together, my friends, we will win. All right, have a lovely evening.